The Chicago Bulls head coaching search has now ballooned up to 11 candidates that have been named as interviewing for the position for the Chicago Bulls. And while Bryson Graham casting a wide net is the right thing to do, hopefully we get a name officially announced soon on who's going to be the next Chicago Bulls head coach. With about a month left until the NBA draft, we want that name in place so we kind of know the style that we're drafting for. We'll talk a little bit about that and the 11 candidates that have been named for the Chicago Bulls. On top of that, we're going to talk about the rumors that have popped up recently about Ayo Dosunmu making a return to the Bulls and how realistic is that considering the cap space that's out there in the league. And finally, we're going to take a look at how the Chicago Bulls should balance their roster with youth and veterans. And we're going to actually look around the league in some examples of when balancing youth or going all youth or youth and veterans has either worked or not worked for teams. We're going to talk about all that plus more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go and get into this content for today. Y'all, before the content, though, hit that subscribe button, right? About 40% of you guys are not subscribed to the channel, and every day that I've been saying this now at the top of the show, there's been at least one or two people that said, hey, I honestly thought I was subscribed. And that's because I post every single day and have done so for 1,815 straight days. So because of that, it feels like I'm in a lot of your algorithms. But go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get to the goal of 50,000 subscribers this year. But with that said, let's jump into the content. So Johnnie Bryant was added to the list of Chicago Bulls candidates over the weekend, as was Chris Quinn. And so now the Chicago Bulls head coaching candidate list has grown exponentially. And the names that are all on this all have different reasons why they're there. I've said it before, a lot of these guys I can see being very successful for the Chicago Bulls as the head coach. And so because of that, I understand what Bryson Graham is doing. Now, I was talking about this over on Twitter, and somebody pointed out, well, Haize, what if they already know the candidate they're going to go with and they're using this interview process to kind of just look around the league, get some other things, get some other voices, maybe even get a head start on some of the assistants that candidate could want? And, if this was the NFL, I'd believe that more, right? We saw that with our Chicago Bears a lot, right? Like, when the Bears were doing the head coaching candidate search, a lot of those guys end up becoming, assistants. Back when we were hiring for, an offensive coordinator, a lot of those guys end up being on the staff of the offensive coordinator. So, that happens a lot more in football because you have so many different coaches, so many kind of things that are labeled as promotions in coaching. I think there's a lot of natural and genuine interest in these candidates. I think also you just want to hear every pitch so you can kind of make the best. Like I said before, it's about getting the best person, not necessarily the best resume, right? But when we look at this list of names that have been here, that have now been named for that's going to be interviewed for this position. Johnnie Bryant was the one that was recently added. We already know what Johnnie Bryant and what he's done around. I covered that on yesterday's episode. He's the current assistant coach with the Cleveland Cavaliers. You have Sean Sweeney, who's the Spurs associate head coach and the guy that brings in team building, leadership, two-way, play that you like there. You have Sean Sweeney. Micah Nori, who is a long-term, 20-plus year veteran assistant coach around the NBA who hasn't got a shot at being the head coach yet. You have Dave Bliss, the assistant with the OKC Thunder, a favorite of a lot of guys, mainly because he comes from that Thunder organization that is built and developed very well correctly over that. You have Tiago Splitter, the young guy who, turned the Portland Trailblazers into a winning team, got them into the playoffs, also helped get the Bulls the 15th overall pick, but a guy that brings the modern European philosophies and merges that with traditional NBA philosophies in the way that he coaches basketball. And keep in mind, that was without an offseason to really, instill his system from the ground up, starting with. So there's some signs that Tiago Splitter can be a really good guy. He's developed really well. He had players developed under him. Comes from a really good coaching lineage as well, Tiago Splitter. You have James Borrego, Wes Unseld. These are the two safer names, in my personal opinion. Not saying that everybody looks at them as the safe names, but they're two of the safer names, in my personal opinion, that are on this list. James Borrego, somebody who's worked with Bryson Graham before, coming over as being the interim head coach with the New Orleans Pelicans last season. Wes Unseld, a guy on the Bulls' current assistant staff that has been a head coach of the Washington Wizards before. I personally think he's better as an assistant throughout when you see what he's done with his career. Again, my personal opinion. And then you have Lamar Skeeter, who's currently the assistant with the Charlotte Hornets. Ryan Schmidt, who's a current assistant with the Atlanta Hawks, meaning that he already has a relationship with Bryson Graham in some way or fashion. Jerry Stackhouse, who was the assistant with the Golden State Warriors. He's left that job. So regardless if he takes the Bulls head coaching job or not, he's not going back to Golden State. And then, of course, my favorite guy, and that is Chris Quinn, the current Miami Heat assistant that has been, 12 years with that organization, has been Eric Spoelstra's right-hand man. And so what you'll see from that list is you have a nice mix of youth, right? Younger coaches that have – Dave Bliss is younger than me. He's 37 years old, right? Like, you have that. But then you have guys like Micah Nori, who's been – in the NBA almost as long as I've been alive at the same time, right? Like, so you have those things, and I think Bryson Graham has gone about this the right way. I think that, just trying to find the right guy, trying to find the right mindset. You want to cast a wide net. I said this on yesterday's episode is I don't think we've ever seen the Bulls cast this wide of a net before. Like, let's just go back to it. When we hired Billy Donovan, I think we interviewed like 3 or 4 candidates there, but not this level, right? And Billy Donovan, almost immediately after his name became available, Bulls didn't think they can get him. They got him, right? Some of the finalists that were on that list ended up going on to be some good coaches, but, we get Billy Donovan. Jim Boylan, the guy before him, we didn't even interview. He took over as the interim head coach. Then we gave him a contract to be the head coach. Fred Hoiberg, who followed up Tom Thibodeau, we knew that Fred Hoiberg was going to get the position almost at the start of that season when they started talking about potentially firing Tom Thibodeau, right? Tom Thibodeau was probably the last time, we casted a wider net where things were really open, but almost immediately, almost everybody wanted Tom Thibodeau, right? So, like, we haven't really had this type of search in damn near 20 years for the Chicago Bulls, and hopefully it leads us to getting the right guy. And that is the most important part of all of this, is just getting the right guy. If you do, case closed. You got the right guy. So, we'll see where it goes in this one, but hopefully this week for me personally, we get this decision made because, the NBA draft is right around the corner. And, I want everything. And it's not about, the fact that you can't draft without a coach or anything like that. It's just the fact that I want everything to be in place before we go into the draft so that we have one mind, one sound, and one decision-making group who works on figuring this out for the Bulls. The draft is 29 days away. So let's see what's going to happen in regards to that. But all right, moving on from that, I want to talk about this recent rumor that popped back up over the last couple of days, and that is from Joe Cowley with the Chicago Sun-Times, who had a brief period of after the AK fire was riding a wave of I'm getting stuff right, and then almost all of his predictions since the Matt Lloyd calling him the front runner have been down, right? But I'll say this, right? Ayo Dosunmu potentially coming back would, of course, be something that a lot of Bulls fans, a lot of people in the city of Chicago enjoy, but it would also make some sense, right? Like, you need a starting 2 guard. I think Ayo Dosunmu, with his ability, could start next to Josh Giddey fine, bring some defense to this team. It's from the city, all that type of stuff. So this was a prediction that was made by Joe Cowley, right? And while, with Ayo, who played really good basketball in Minnesota in the playoffs, all that type of stuff, a career-high 43-point performance in the playoffs, those type of things, they raise your value, right? His defense, his perimeter scoring, his playmaking, especially in the fast break. He was really Minnesota's only on-ball playmaker other than Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle, who Julius Randle had a rough playoff. So there's things in regards to that, right? And so I want to talk about it from this point. Do I think that there's a high probability Ayo Dosunmu comes back here? No. And that's nothing against Ayo. It's just, you get a taste of winning, don't you want to win? But at the same time, there's not a lot of teams with cap space. So first, let's talk about the reasons how it could happen if it does. One, Minnesota would have to either decide that they need to move on from Ayo, do a sign and trade or whatever else it is. And Minnesota is a team that, much like the Chicago Bulls, doesn't like to pay the luxury tax. Their tax bill is going to be very high. Therefore, them keeping Ayo, especially if Ayo wants $20+ million, it could not work. Now, they are $16 million below the first, 16.8, so almost $17 million beneath the first tax apron this offseason, meaning that could be the basis of what they use to re-sign Ayo. And that's realistic in a case like that, right? That is something that they could realistically do. If Ayo is going to take that money, stay with the winning team, stay with an organization that bet on him, and that is a possibility that he takes less to stay with Minnesota. Maybe even takes a 1 or 2 year deal. I think he's going to take, with his age, he's probably going to want to lock up the most money long term that he can right now. But we've seen players take shorter terms deals so they get back on the market and get another raise, right? They can opt out, whatever it is. So there are options that can lead him back to Minnesota. And then on top of that, they've already talked about, there's been rumors, I should say, that, either Julius Randle or Rudy Gobert could be guys that could be gone to open up more flexibility for them to add to this team after not making the Western Conference Finals like they had the 2 prior seasons. So there's still the most likely scenario is him going back to Minnesota. But how could he get to the Bulls? How could this happen? Well, there are only 3 teams that have cap space in the season, in the offseason this year. The Brooklyn Nets, the Chicago Bulls, the Los Angeles Lakers. Out of that, right, if Ayo Dosunmu does want to go to a team that's trying to win, that means that the Brooklyn Nets are definitely out of the category, and the Chicago Bulls are probably out too, right? The Los Angeles Lakers are a team that could be moving on from LeBron, that could be trying to find pieces that fit around Luka Doncic, actually could make some sense to try to pursue Ayo Dosunmu. Reportedly, they have their sights set on Peyton Watson, but it doesn't mean that they can't shift focuses to an unrestricted free agent, and Ayo Dosunmu, who plays defense, can play the 2 or the 3, could fit probably with Luka because he can do some stuff off ball. There's some conversation to be made there. That Lakers team does need defense, so don't count them out. But then the Chicago Bulls, who have the most cap space in the league. If money can lure Ayo to come to a situation where he may not win, the Bulls have that. Now, because they don't have his bird rights, that they're going to have to overpay to get that, but the Bulls do have that with him being an unrestricted free agent, so that's the part in it that plays. And so because of that, I think you got to look at that and see, all right, there's a case for I just don't want Bulls fans to get excited, to get their heads over heels with this one and think that Ayo's going to come back here because it was reported by Joe Cowley or anybody for that matter. This isn't about it being against Joe Cowley or not. It's just once a player gets a taste of winning, a lot of times they just want to keep that going, right? So, we shall see what's going to happen in regards to that. But I think when it comes to this, bringing Ayo back can't just be about nostalgia or trying to find your future in your past. It has to be about fit. And honestly, the fit could make a lot more sense now than what people realize. And there's a potential for that. There's a potential for the fit on the court as well as the fit for his pockets because he does deserve to get paid after that. And that's what you look at it with. So let me know what you guys think in regards to that and how you guys feel in regards to the Chicago Bulls and potentially bringing Ayo Dosunmu back. Let me know that down below. Let's get to the main topic of today's episode. This topic started off, and you guys know, we've talked a lot about how the Bulls can use their cap space. We've talked about going after a restricted free agent. We've talked about taking on bad money to stack draft assets. But I want to talk about more than just pursuing, because even a lot of the candidates that we talked about pursuing are younger. Peyton Watson, younger. Walker Kessler, younger. Mark Williams, younger, right? That's why they're restricted free agents. And so now, with Chicago having the financial flexibility that they do have, I do think this is that, is that you have a chance to add veterans that help the development process. Now, some people have the mindset of, and some of you guys have said this in the comment section, of I don't want anybody in this roster 25 and younger, which kind of spurred this idea and thought is that how do you fit veterans and how do veterans fit in the timeline, right? I think that you find examples around the NBA where veterans help fit the timeline but not block development. And that's the thread that you want to walk in this one, right? Is that you want to find a way to find veterans that actually fit what you're trying to do and don't block the development of your young pieces. Under the Billy Donovan era, a lot of people would say that we have veterans that block the development of young pieces, and that's the balance that you want to fit here, right? In that. The Bulls have to weaponize their flexibility and not waste it, and cap space only matters, as I keep saying, when you use it with discipline, right? So I want to talk about the young core and a young core that needs veterans for the Bulls, right? And you need the right veterans. When you look at the Bulls' young core of players under 25, Josh Giddey, Manas Buzelis, Noah Essengate, Leonard Miller, you could throw Rob Dillingham in that. You guys know I'm not the biggest fan of Rob Dillingham or his skill set. I don't know if he's going to end up being an NBA player, but he is still a young player that you could want to invest development minutes in and figure out. And all this is going off of they earn the minutes, right? I want to be clear here. They earn it because that is really what trial by fire, right? But with the Bulls, through Bryson Graham's words and through a lot of the head coaches that we see, development is going to be a priority there, right? And I think I've done this by looking over the NBA. I think that when you look at the minutes, right, the minute split for the Chicago Bulls should be 50 to 60% of the Bulls' total minutes go to young players, whereas about 40 to 50% go to veteran players if you have the right veterans on your team. If you don't have the right veterans, then you can tilt that more towards the young players, right? Young teams tend to struggle with consistency, defense, and late game execution, right? Veterans help teach winning habits, and the veterans that help teach winning habits and help kind of provide structure for your young players, they don't take away from the developmental minutes for the players, right? Playing kids sounds great until nobody knows how to close games. You don't just magically learn how to close games. You have to be in those situations where, the closing of games matters, where veterans have to help with that, and you have to guard without fouling or organize the offense. Development needs structure. That is the overarching thing in this conversation that I want to have, right? So when you look at the ideal veteran blueprint, and this again, these are all my opinion pieces. I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this. But when you look at the history of the league and some of the teams that have had to go off these finding players or vets to go around young players, I think the best way that we can kind of bring all this together is to show examples of and to talk about teams that had that balance, right? And so I think that there is a number of teams that we can look at. I have the 2025 Chicago Bulls just because it's our own team, and I know a lot of you guys are going to be familiar there. The 2014-15 Milwaukee Bucks, the 2021-22 Warriors, and the 2022-23 Pistons. So those are the teams that we're going to talk about in this segment, right? The average age of the 2025-26 Chicago Bulls was 25.4. The percentage of their minutes that went to players younger than 25 was 55%. And of course, we had the 31-51 record. Number 12th in the East, we did not make the NBA playoffs, right? You look at the 2014-15 Bucks, right? This is a team that had the average age of 24.3, right? That was their average age. And their minutes, 43% of their minutes went to players below 25. They ended up with a 41-41 record. They lost to the Chicago Bulls in the first round of the playoffs. They went 2-4 against us in those playoffs. And many people remember that's when you started seeing some things of some of those young players that ended up developing. The 2021-22 Warriors are the one team that became NBA champions. They had an average age of 28 and a half. 21% of their minutes went to players below 25, but of course they went 53 and 29. They became NBA champions, but that was a different team, a different roster. They had already been through some things, but that was the two timeline, the most where the Warriors' two timeline ploy kind of worked for them. But again, 21% of their minutes went to players below 25, but they had already shown that they could be a championship caliber team before. Then you had the 22-23 Detroit Pistons, right? Their average age was 22 years old, and 70% of their minutes went to players below 25. They went 17-65, and of course, they did not make the playoffs, right? So that is when you look at the timelines of teams. You look at the Detroit Pistons now, 22-23, average age of 22, they went 17-25. 25-26, just a couple of years later, still an average age of 25 and a half, almost 26, but number one team in the East. They end up disappointing in the playoffs, though, right? But that's what it comes down to, right? So, and some would say, hey, Haize, playing young players and letting them learn right now and having a bad record may be the best for us because we keep getting lottery picks. And so this isn't to say like, oh, only do it this way. I just wanted the data. And so you guys know I'm a very data-driven person. And so I like that when it comes down to I just love data. It helps kind of me put my thoughts in the good areas. But overall, it comes down to this. I think that you still need veterans. And veterans actually help your young players grow because they can grow in structure. They're learning how to win and learning the right preparation. You have to have the right process to end up getting better results. And that's why I think having veterans around, that's why I've never really been somebody that have just said things like, oh yeah, jettison off all, I don't want to see anybody under 25 on this roster. I don't usually say that. Now, I do think that the players that are under 25 do need to be prioritized. That is why I said like the minutes balance for me, 50 to 60% of your minutes go to players below 25, where the Bulls are right now. Whatever happens in that time, if you lose games, if you're winning games, those guys are going through the trial by fire to get to that point. So I think the ideal veteran blueprint is this. If you're going to add veterans to this team, veterans who don't take away from the development of your young players, you need a defensive-minded center who helps protect the rim and is solid in pick-and-roll defense, a 3-and-D wing who doesn't need the ball a lot in their hands, so therefore you aren't taking away from the playmaking of Josh Giddey, the point forward development of Modest Buzelis, hopefully the the point forward development of Cam Boozer as well, if he's the guy that we end up drafting in that as well. Or if you do end up drafting Caleb Wilson, you get a 3-and-D wing. Caleb Wilson can get more in those on-ball reps because you're trying to develop him as a shooter and a scorer, right? I think you need veterans who defend, communicate, shoot, and stabilize your offense and defense. Those are the type of veterans that you need if you're going to bring veterans into this team. You need to avoid veterans who block. Buzelis, Giddey, Leonard Miller, the draft picks, Noah Essengay, if you believe in him, you don't want players that block those guys. The number 4 pick, of course, should be used on the most long-term upside, the guy that can be a starter and maybe be the franchise player for your team. And number 15 should be used on talent and the right piece that fits in with that team. I think that's what you have to do. So overall, I'll say this for me, right? I think the best balance of a team comes down to having the right veterans. Even if when you look at the Derrick Rose Bulls, right? Like that team always had veterans on it. Derrick Rose always had vets around him. But then again, he always had players around him too that were not that much older than him, between Joakim Noah being on those teams, right? Later on, Jimmy Butler coming on those teams. There were young players on those teams that were also young, but then you also supplemented with some vets. And I think that you want to strike that balance and strike that balance very well. And if you can do that, you'll see how the development accelerates really quick for these guys. And therefore, maybe we can start building those winning habits this year, this upcoming season, and then we can take advantage of those winning those winning habits that we've built, and then going to the 2026-27 season with adding another pick and already having now a young team that really kind of learned what it took to win. That's just my personal opinion. I know you have people that want to see the team bottom out, and that's not. I'm not here to argue that point. I'm just here to give my opinion on that. But I'd love to hear from you guys in the comment section on how you feel about it overall, right? The coaching search is growing. The draft is getting closer and closer by the day. And the Bulls have to get all this right this offseason. But I think another thing that we have to get right is what we do with our cap space, whether it is taking on bad contracts to stack picks, whether it is finding the right key veterans, or you're finding veterans, players that have youth but have been in the league a handful of years that do both, that have been like Walker Kessler, Peyton Watson. These are players that do both, right? And that's why they can walk that thin line. Peyton Watson's been on a championship. Well, he wasn't on a championship team. He's been around players that have won championships and understand how to prepare, but he's still very young and kind of fits your timeline. Same thing with Walker Kessler. He's young but fits your timeline, but played a lot, hasn't done a lot of winning because he's the Utah Jazz. So I think you want to strike that balance. But let me know your guys' thoughts on all that down below, of course. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode or an upload. You can follow us at Bull Central Pod on every social media platform. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.